Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bookercast, the podcast where books come to life.
And I'm so excited to dive into another amazing story with all of you.
Whether you're a bookworm or just love a good story, this is the place for you.
Every episode, we explore incredible books, talk about their stories and characters, and share insights that'll make you fall in love with reading all over again.
All right, let's not keep you waiting any longer. Get comfortable, and let's jump right into it.
Sounds good.
Welcome to today's deep dive. Today, we're going to take a closer look at The Name of the Rose. Have you ever read it?
I have. It's such a fascinating book. A bit dense in parts, but the story pulls you right in.
Well, it is a historical mystery set in, 14th century Italy in this Benedictine abbey, right?
That is. But it goes so much deeper than just a whodunit. It's got philosophy and theology, even a touch of medieval politics woven in there.
Oh, yeah, I can definitely see that. So imagine this. You're in this remote monastery way up on a mountain, and then all of a sudden, all these bizarre murders start happening.
Right out of nowhere. It's like something out of a modern thriller, but with monks and manuscripts.
And then there's William of Baskerville,
Yeah.
our main character, a Franciscan friar who's also a super sharp detective.
He's like a medieval Sherlock Holmes with a habit instead of a deerstalker hat.
Exactly. And he arrives just as the first murder happens, and right away he starts noticing things that everybody else seems to miss.
You remember Brunellus, the abbot's missing horse?
Oh, yeah. How could I forget?
William figures out where that horse went just by looking at its hoof prints in the snow. He just uses logic and observation.
It shows you how brilliant he is right from the start.
It really does. That whole scene emphasizes how much William believes in empirical observation. He's all about that process of going from the general to the specific, in terms of knowledge. He doesn't jump to conclusions. He wants to understand things step by step.
Very methodical.
Exactly. But as he keeps investigating, he realizes these aren't just any old murders. They're somehow tied to this mysterious forbidden book. And this book is hidden somewhere in the Abbey's library, a very unusual library.
Oh, yeah. The library. It's almost a character in itself. It's massive.
Yeah.
And it represents not only the vastness of knowledge, but also the dangers of forbidden ideas.
It really does.
It's designed as a labyrinth, this huge, intricate structure meant to protect all the secrets that are inside.
It's kind of a fortress of knowledge, with only the librarian allowed inside.
And even then, nobody else knows the way out. It's a closely guarded secret.
Eco really uses the library to explore that tension between preserving knowledge and wanting to control it,
Well, for sure. And then we have Jorge, the blind librarian. Yeah. He embodies that tension, doesn't he? He's dedicated to protecting the books, but he's also super protective of who gets to access them.
Yeah, Jorge is an interesting one, a really complex character. He genuinely believes he's protecting the world from dangerous ideas, but his methods make you question the whole idea of censorship and the very nature of truth.
It's a big question, isn't it? So we have this intriguing mystery, a really cool setting, and then these characters who are full of secrets. But I feel like there's more going on, beneath the surface.
Oh, absolutely. The Name of the Rose is definitely a deep dive into that struggle between knowledge and faith. Eco makes us think about whether reason and religious dogma can actually exist together, or if they're just fundamentally opposed.
That's a big one. And the fact that the novel takes place during a really turbulent time in the church makes it even more interesting.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. This was the 14th century. There were huge debates happening within the church about things like poverty and heresy, the role of the papacy even. These weren't just abstract ideas. They were really dangerous topics.
Right. You could get in a lot of trouble for saying the wrong thing.
Exactly. Eco reflects that historical context by showing us all these different viewpoints that existed within the abbey. You have characters like William who really embrace observation and evidence, and then you have characters like Jorge who cling to tradition and dogma.
It makes you think. Eco is suggesting that blind faith isn't enough.
It does, doesn't it? It feels like he's pushing us to question, to think critically.
Yeah.
Maybe even to confront some uncomfortable truths.
And he also wants us to think about who controls knowledge, how it gets used to keep people in power. The Abbey, with its hierarchy and all its secrets, it becomes like this mini version of those power dynamics that play out in the wider society.
I think you're right. It's definitely a microcosm of those bigger forces.
But it's not all philosophy and theological debate. Eco is also a master of weaving in symbolism and literary references.
Oh, definitely. He adds all these layers of meaning to the story, like even just the title, The Name of the Rose.
It makes you think. A rose can be beautiful, but it's also fragile.
Exactly. There are multiple ways to interpret it. And then there's the whole motif of the labyrinth that keeps coming up. It's not just about the library's physical structure, it's about the complexities of the human mind itself.
Oh, right. Right, that search for truth and the risk of getting lost along the way.
Absolutely. All that intellectual exploration can be dangerous.
And Eco doesn't miss a beat with the symbolism. He uses little details, tiny events, and they often hint at bigger things that are about to happen.
It makes you want to go back and reread passages like you might have missed something important on the first read-through.
It's like you're piecing together a puzzle, just like what William is doing with those murders.
Exactly. You're trying to make sense of all the clues, the symbols, the characters' motivations, and that historical context, too.
So we have a chilling mystery, a fascinating setting, complicated characters, and all these big questions that Eco is throwing at us.
It's the perfect setup for a great story.
And there's still so much more to uncover.
Definitely. In the next part of our deep dive, we're going to follow William as he goes deeper into the Abbey. He's got to navigate that library labyrinth, and he's going to face some dangers that he could never have imagined.
Stay tuned. Things are about to get really interesting.
They are. Welcome back to our deep dive into The Name of the Rose. We left off with William still searching for that forbidden book, the one he thinks holds all the answers to these murders.
And this isn't just some random old book, right? It's like the whole library itself. It represents this power of knowledge.
Oh, definitely. And how far some people will go to try and control it.
Right. So William, he's got to navigate this maze, both physically and metaphorically.
To get to the truth.
Yeah, like he's playing some kind of intellectual chess game.
Yeah.
Trying to stay one step ahead of the killer and all the Abbey's secrets.
And you know what's interesting? He gets a bit of help from an unexpected source, Alenardo.
Oh, yeah. Alenardo, one of those older monks.
Yeah. He's like a walking history book of the Abbey, knows all about its secrets and hidden passageways.
Right. And I remember he was the one who revealed the way of the serpent.
Yes, exactly. It's this hidden passage marked by all these animal symbols, and it leads right to the heart of the labyrinth, the Finis Africa. It's this place that even the librarian isn't allowed to enter.
Wait, what's Finis Africa? It sounds kind of ominous.
It literally means the end of Africa. And back then, in the medieval world, it was like this representation of the edge of everything they knew, this mysterious and dangerous place.
So it's like this secret room deep inside the library.
Oh, yeah.
And it symbolizes forbidden knowledge, the kind of stuff that could turn their whole world upside down.
Exactly. It's where they keep all their darkest secrets, the things they think would just destroy faith and reason if they ever got out.
Okay, but just as William gets this crucial information, things take a turn.
We meet this young girl from the village. She snuck into the Abbey.
Oh, right. And this encounter with her adds like a whole other dimension to the story. We're in a monastery, right? A place dedicated to spirituality, avoiding worldly desires.
Right. Yet here's this girl representing temptation, the forbidden.
Exactly. It's like Eco's reminding us that human nature doesn't just disappear, even in a place that's supposed to be all about higher things.
He's showing us all the complexities and contradictions of what it means to be human.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
And her presence also ties into those big themes of sin and punishment that run through the whole story.
Yes. Because her actions, they seem innocent at first.
But they end up having some really tragic consequences.
Yeah. And her story gets all tangled up with the murders. They find her with Berengar's body, remember? The monk who was also involved with the library's secrets.
It just shows you how in this whole web of intrigue, even small choices can have these huge unintended effects.
It's a great example of that butterfly effect, right? One little action can lead to something huge.
Definitely. And her story puts William in a difficult position, too.
He knows she's involved, but he's struggling with whether to tell anyone.
Because he knows what could happen to her.
Exactly. It shows a different side of William. You know, he's this brilliant detective trying to solve a theological puzzle, but he's also wrestling with compassion and empathy.
It humanizes him. It
Yeah.
reminds us that even the most logical people still have to make tough choices,
Yeah.
especially when other people's lives are at stake.
And as if things weren't complicated enough, the papal legation shows up.
Oh, right. The Abbey just fills up with all this political and religious drama.
Yeah, the delegation is there to debate some pretty controversial issues, like the whole question of poverty within the church.
Should the church own nothing? Should it embrace total poverty? That was the Franciscan ideal.
Right, but it was a very divisive issue. It even led to these heretical movements like the Dulcinians.
And speaking of division, the papal delegation brings Bernard Guy with them, the infamous inquisitor.
Oh, yeah. Talk about pouring gasoline on a fire.
Right. Bernard Guy, he represents the church's power. and its willingness to use force against anyone who disagrees.
He's ruthless about rooting out heresy. And the moment he arrives, this cloud of suspicion hangs over the entire abbey.
Yeah, it's like Eco is setting up this battle between reason and dogma, curiosity and blind obedience.
He's definitely playing with those contrasts. And William, with his open mind and his love of inquiry, is on the opposite side of the spectrum from someone like Bernard Guy.
So we've got murders, this mysterious book, this secret room, and now a full-blown inquisition going on. And all of this against the backdrop of these huge philosophical and theological debates.
It is a lot to keep track of, just like William is trying to do. But even with all this going on, he's laser-focused on finding that book.
And he figures out Venantius's code, right? The one he found in the translator stuff?
Yes. He realizes it's written in this kind of zodiacal alphabet using astrological symbols instead of letters.
It's really clever.
And it's a real testament to William's intelligence and his love for puzzles.
But just decoding it isn't enough, is it?
No, it unlocks a riddle, a series of clues that hint out where the book is hidden.
So William's getting closer.
He is. But as the deaths keep happening, there's this growing sense of paranoia in the abbey. Everyone suspects everyone else. And even William, with his rational mind, starts to wonder if there's something more going on.
Like, what if it's not just a human killer? What if something supernatural is at work?
Yeah, exactly. Like, is there a demonic force behind all this? It really plays with your expectations.
Yeah, one of the most intense scenes is when Jorge gives his sermon about the coming of the Antichrist.
Oh man, that scene gives me chills every time. He's describing this terrifying vision of the end times. And you can feel the fear gripping the monks.
It's like he's manipulating them, using his knowledge and authority to instill this sense of dread.
It's a perfect example of how powerful words can be, especially when they tap into our deepest fears.
And it foreshadows all the chaos that's about to break loose.
Speaking of chaos, we have to talk about the fire.
It's more than just a fire, isn't it? It's like this symbol of everything falling apart.
Exactly. It represents this destruction of knowledge and the loss of everything they thought they knew. And the library, this incredible repository of history and ideas, it just goes up in flames. It's heartbreaking.
But even in all that chaos, there's also a sense of truth being revealed, right? Like the fire forces things to come out into the open.
Right. And we finally find out who the murderer is and why they did it, but we'll have to wait for the final part of our deep dive to explore all that.
Stay with us as we unpack the aftermath of the fire and delve into the lasting implications of Eco's brilliant novel. Welcome back to our deep dive into The Name of the Rose. It's crazy to think we left off with that abbey totally engulfed in flames. Talk about a powerful symbol.
Right. It's like this destruction of knowledge, all those secrets going up in smoke. And remember, the fire kind of brings everything to a head for the characters. It forces them to face the truth.
So let's get to the bottom of this.
Sure.
After all this suspense, who is the murderer? What made them do all of this?
Well, the killer turns out to be Jorge, the blind librarian.
Wait, Jorge. But he was so dedicated to protecting the library, to knowledge itself. How could he be behind all the murders?
That's the thing. His devotion kind of blinded him. He was so convinced that some knowledge was too dangerous to share. He believed certain truths could just destroy people's faith, lead to chaos.
Like he took that whole idea of forbidden knowledge to the extreme.
Exactly. And the book at the center of it all, it was the second book of Aristotle's Poetics, the lost one.
The one about laughter. It seems so strange that a book about something like laughter could be seen as such a threat.
I know, right? But Jorge was terrified of it. He believed that laughter undermined the authority of the church, that it could lead people away from the true path, the seriousness of faith.
So he was willing to kill people to keep a book about laughter hidden. I mean, it just seems so extreme.
It does, from our modern perspective. But for Jorge, it was all about protecting the order he believed in, the order he was convinced would save people. He just couldn't see the harm he was causing.
It's a good reminder of what happens when fear and rigid beliefs take control.
Definitely. Eco is really warning us about the dangers of censorship, that trying to control what people know often backfires. It just creates more problems.
And that definitely still resonates today, doesn't it? I mean, we see people trying to restrict access to information all the time, suppressing ideas they don't agree with. Makes you wonder, what are we so afraid of? What truths are we trying to avoid?
Exactly. It makes you think, how do we find that balance between protecting people and making sure knowledge is still free? How do we keep from using knowledge as a weapon to control each other?
That's a tough question. So how did William finally catch Jorge? Did he see him committing a murder or something?
Not quite. He used his logic, his understanding of the library, to figure out that Jorge had to be the one behind everything. He put together all those clues, the message, the secret passageway, Jorge's obsession with controlling knowledge. It all pointed to him.
It's like William was solving this really elaborate puzzle.
And there's this super intense scene in the Finis Africae, that hidden room. William tries to get through to Jorge, tries to make him see what he's done.
But it's too late, right? Jorge is beyond reason at that point.
Yeah, he's just too caught up in his own convictions. And in a last-ditch effort to protect his truth, he sets the library on fire. He wants to destroy that book and everything it represents.
So that's why the library burns down. It's this ultimate act of censorship, driven by fear and desperation.
It really is, and it's so ironic because Jorge spent his life trying to preserve knowledge, and in the end, he destroys the very thing he loved.
What about William and Adso? Did they manage to escape the fire?
They do, but the experience changes them. Adso, who started out as this naive young monk, he's seen the dark side of knowledge. He understands the danger of blind faith.
And William, even with his sharp mind and his dedication to logic, he's forced to confront the limits of reason.
It's a powerful reminder that sometimes logic isn't enough to overcome fanaticism.
So the Name of the Rose doesn't give us any easy answers, just leaves us with more questions.
Right, like what is knowledge really worth? How do we balance faith and reason? How far should we go to protect ideas, even dangerous ones?
These are big questions that go way beyond that abbey in the story.
Are questions that we're still wrestling with today.
It really makes you think. Knowledge is such a powerful force. And in the end, it's up to us to decide what we do with it. Do we embrace it, share it, learn from it? Or do we let fear take over, suppress it, maybe even destroy it? The choice is ours.
It really is.
That was our deep dive into The Name of the Rose. We hope it got you thinking, too. What are your thoughts on the novel's themes? How do they connect to the world we live in today?
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Bookercast. We hope you enjoyed diving into it as much as we did. Thank you so much for spending your time with us. Your support means the world, and we can't wait to hear your thoughts on this episode.
Don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, and share this episode with your fellow book lovers. And let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing from you. See you in the next deep dive. Bye for now, and happy reading.